one question, then I'll come back to you. I mean, the other film that comes out seems by you recently is Richard III.
No,
sorry, Merchant of Venice. In which you managed to produce the most rationally acceptable account from Albertino and Jeremy Irons. Actually, again, of another extraordinary interrogation. It's very logical. What is directing an actor? I know that's, you can't answer that, but how do you get a performance out of her? What is it? What is it that you do when you direct?
Well, first of all, you have to have a very, very clear idea of what the narrative is. A narrative is about desire and conflict.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is be very, very clear about what the narrative desire, or the desire of the character is, what conflict, the conflicts are. But you also have to have a global view of the whole thing. The actor himself will have that view. And to a large extent, you try to keep that global sense of narrative in your mind at every single moment.
So that every bit.
Every bit. You then, you have to trust your actor. In other words, the worst thing you can possibly do when you're directing is, often you have in your head, you have an idea of a person, and then the actor comes, and he's not quite the idea of the person that you thought. For various reasons, he might be very famous, and they need him in the film, and all that kind of stuff. But at that moment, you have to forget absolutely all preconceptions whatsoever, and start to look at a human being with all his frailties in front of you. And that human being, slowly, given time, becomes the person. And you come into, the only way I can describe it is you get into this sort of bubble where you're living a reality that isn't the reality that everybody else is living. It's the reality of the narrative drama of this particular thing that you're doing. And you feel, when it works, you feel what I call the tingle. I had a conversation with Denzel Washington, for all people, about this, and he agreed with me absolutely. You get this thing called the tingle, which is suddenly, it all clicks into place. And at that moment, you know that the drama is actually happening between the characters, and the characters are being psychologically true. And then basically you try to, you have to have the knowledge that cinema exaggerates everything, and that you have to play it down. You know, you're playing to a tiny thing, and most of what goes on in cinema goes on behind the eyes. I mean, Dirk Bogarde said, I built my career entirely on my capacity to defocus my eyes. It's perfectly true. You know, if you look at somebody like that, you're looking at them. But if you look at them, if you go like that in the cinema, you know, the audience fills your brain with whatever they need to fill it with.
Questions?
I don't remember from the book, but you used a female voice, in fact, very slowly, I saw, for the telescreen.
Yes.
Was that a deliberate choice, or is that just taken from the book? I can't remember.
No, it's not taken from the book. No, I deliberately used it because she was a favourite of mine. Actually, interestingly enough, the telescreens are a very good example of some of the technical problems of translating the book into a film. Apart from the fact it's a famous book and you can't mess around with it too much. Orwell grew up in a world where propaganda was basically radio's public speaking and posters. Those were the big elements of the time. And he uses those a lot, and we use them a lot in the film. He also invented the telescreen, but he had absolutely no idea about the power of television. He had no conception of it. And I discovered this while I was actually making the film, that the telescreens just took over.
Yes.
They absolutely take over. Yeah. And so the posters just become sort of the backdrop, and the other stuff is just a sort of a backdrop. And so, as I realised they were taking over, and by the way, there are no special, I won an award for special effects in this movie, but there are actually no special effects at all. So everything is done live in camera. So the telescreens are actually, it's immensely complicated, they're actually happening while although I shot a lot of the material, pre-shot it. But you know, that telescreen stuff starts to have an impact, visual impact, that you have to adjust to, which is what we did.
I mean, what's extraordinary about it is it feels also very modern because there's noise going on the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, which must be quite difficult because there's just there's that noise behind,
Yeah.
that visual activity behind.
Yeah.